Iowa State is set to do battle with Kansas on the hardwood here in Hilton Coliseum in Ames, Iowa. It's going to be epic. But first, TJ Otzelberger has some thoughts. We'll break it down here at Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I can't appreciate it enough. And wherever you're listening or watching, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Yet another day revolving around basketball, no football news. Let's break it down. Kansas, Iowa State, big game, big game. TJ Otzelberger, Milan, Taman, all interviewed about the upcoming game. We'll talk about that first. Then we're going to actually break down the game in the second segment. And finally, to round things out, Iowa State women beat Texas Tech to win to move to 3 straight wins. So going to have to chat about that as well. But before we get to the women, we got to start with the men and to kind of hype up this game because it might be absolutely, epic. We are talking of monumental proportions. This game could be off the charts. Let's talk a little bit about what the people think. The people that might be on the floor, that is, right? You got Taman, Milan, they play the game, and TJ is the one that coaches the game. So what are we looking at here? What are we looking at? First things first, we all know that TJ Otz, or TJ Thoughtsolberger, as some have said, he just spits bars every time he is on the mic. And I've got some here that are more like kind of those grabby kind of phrases. And I've also got a few things in here that were very serious. I will say, before we kind of jump into the actual quotes, this press conference had a very different tone. Generally, they're pretty lighthearted, taking sips of water between most of the questions. There's been instances where TJ will come in and say, "Oh, I see you're wearing the Broncos hat." Very much, I don't want to say like doesn't care, but just like open, free, lighthearted type of feel to the vibe of the room. This one was hunkered down, Cy fell over. I didn't even see that. Hands right around the mic. Here's the answer. Next question type of deal. And so I immediately love that. This is at least, and Taman talked about this, there's not very many games that you like specifically look forward to more than others. But this is certainly one of them. Iowa State, Kansas, a storied rivalry. And this one, both of the teams obviously being in the top 10, it just means more. Call us the SEC, the Big 12 next SEC. All right, so let's get it started. Overall thoughts of TJ on Kansas. Generally said, Kansas playing well right now. Defense oriented. He said this might be the best that this team has played all year. We're catching them. He didn't say this. I think we're kind of catching them at a bad time. Very thankful we're playing them at home in this one. We'll get more into my thoughts on Kansas as a whole in the second segment. But certainly they look good. They really do look good. I can't lie to you. And he mentioned obviously the defense-oriented portion of that. The physicality of this team is kind of that. I would say more than past years. And one thing that he mentions in particular is that this year they're playing 2 bigs as opposed to just like that 4-guard set that is pretty common now in basketball. And that's something that I don't know if I don't have it down, so I want to bring it up right now. That there's a chance that the aggressiveness is not as much in Iowa State's favor as it has been in the past. This season. This team, playing 2 bigs on the floor, and the talent that they do have, it's immense. It really is. And Iowa State's going to have to come out swinging. Next kind of perfect little segue there. Reporters asked Taman and Milan, what does this team kind of need to get better at, essentially? What do we need to do going into this game? And pretty much consensus answer was rebounding, especially offensive rebounding. And so then they kind of relayed that and said to TJ, they were like, okay, this is what the guys think. How do you get better at rebounding? How do you do that? Different, kind of a tough question to answer there. I can't lie. And he said, it really starts with the want to, right? Understanding how important rebounding is to the game. Now, I was going to kind of pull from that and kind of get into the you got to want to do something if you want to make change and this and that and the other thing. I think I'm just going to stick with the basketball side of this one, to be completely honest. He talked about how much rebounding kind of affects winning, obviously, but playing well, building rhythm, and Kansas is the two bigs there. They're going to make it tough on Iowa State. But he did point out, like, Keyshawn Gilbert, if you look at his best games last year, they've got pretty good rebounding numbers. Same thing with Milan in just against Texas Tech. One of his best plays in the game, came from a rebound, pushes the floor, flip, comes back to him. He gets to shoot a three. And TJ was like, he didn't get a lot of three looks in that game, just the way that they guarded him. And that one, I mean, just look at it right there. Perfect example of seeing it right before your eyes. Defensive and offensive rebounding, obviously, are going to help your team. That's going to be a big deal in the course of the game in more ways than just getting the ball back. It helps build momentum. It helps create opportunities. And I mean, it's just a big deal. So we have to be better about it. And then, actually logistically speaking, he mentioned, especially in this game with a bigger team that Kansas is I guess, rolling out onto the floor, you need to kind of rebound down. Like we talked about ahead of the Baylor game, because of the honoring of the 1999, 2000, 2001 kind of era there. What is rebounding down if you're new? He talks about the bigs boxing out the bigs and the guards coming down and grabbing the rebound. And he mentions specifically or explicitly with two hands. We got to chase the ball with two hands. Okay. No more just like tipping the ball around, grab the ball, secure the ball, and go from there. And I agree. I mean, two hands are better than one in most cases, I guess, unless maybe you're Odell. But Odell plays football, not basketball. That being said, I'll kind of throw in here. This was the more theoretical quote that I pulled, and he kind of just said it nonchalantly, which is how I know this guy is just an absolute dog. I mean, he just always knows exactly what to say, even when he's like not really meaning to say it. But he kind of threw in, quote, "You play to the level of your habits," quote. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it is certainly something that I just love pointing out, his little nuggets that he'll like casually just throw in. And I mean, like I said, this press conference was much more very serious tone, very focused. And he mentioned, because they asked about, well, how's the team handling being so like prevalent in the media because of the success they're having. And he was like, look, we just attack the next day, the next practice, these 40 minutes. How can we get better today? Like it was like more coach speak than normal. And he still got this nugget in there. And I don't know. I just feel like this isn't traditional coach speak. And so, I mean, I'm not going to talk about it because it's not my thought. I mean, I agree with it, but I didn't say it first. I've read it before, but I mean, TJ just dropping bars casually. You play to the level of your habits. Think about that. Hopefully Iowa State has some really good habits. Finally, and they kind of rounded the whole interview out. It was like a big old circle. They asked just kind of about, this Kansas team really, really good. And he said, basically, yes, they are very good right now. And I am excited to get to this preview. It'll be coming right up here in just a few minutes. But he said, we got to be locked in from the start. Locked in on being the aggressor and the effort-based things. Because the game's going to go how it's going to go. And this Iowa State team is very capable of winning games in type A, type B, type C, type D. However you want to win the game, Iowa State's able to do that. But you can't win games if you're not aggressive and if you're not playing the effort side of the coin. This team has to come out and play aggressive, play with passion. And they can beat the Kansas Jayhawks. They can. But Kansas is really good. I mean, they are good right now. They certainly are. And coming up right after this, we're going to break it down. So do not go anywhere. It's going to be a fun breakdown. I honestly, I cannot wait. Coming up after this. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part? The free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, I found everything I needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, and Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Iowa State taking on Kansas in an absolute showdown. I seriously cannot wait. This game is going to be absolutely electric. I mean, that word almost feels insulting because of how good it's going to be. You're here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's break it down. Kansas coming into Ames, currently 12-3, sitting at fourth in the Big 12, 3-1 in the conference. And what happened? What happened to this team? Okay, non-conference wise, they beat UNC, a number 9 ranked UNC, by 3 points. And they beat a Duke team, a number 11 at the time, or I don't know actually how those rankings work, 75-72. They beat a Creighton team who is, I mean, they were pretty good last year. And then we get into the conference games, and they lose their first conference game 62-61 against West Virginia. A stunner. I mean, just a stunner, especially at home. But they certainly seem to take that one pretty personally because they go on to win their next 3, all by double digits, of course. But to break it down point by point, UCF, 51 points. Oh, they scored 51? No. They won by 51 points, 99-48. Unbelievable. And then they play ASU at home. That's a pretty ugly one as well, but only 19 points, 74-55. And then they take on Cincinnati in Cincinnati and win that one by 14, 54-40. Bit of a slugfest in that one, pretty low scoring. That being said, this team just on a tear right now. 99-48 is unbelievable. And so I take a look at their team stats. This is one of my favorite ways to look at who's kind of separating themselves. Hunter Dickinson, the center, we'll get into him in a second, but 15.8 points a game, and Zeke Mayo, 14.3, the guard, and then DeJuan Harris Jr., mentioned by TJ in their presser, at just under 10 points, 9.9. Excuse me. And then KJ Adams Jr. with 8.5 points a game. And then, I mean, down the list, those are just their top couple scorers, but that has nothing to do with rebounding, in which Hunter Dickinson's averaging over 10 rebounds a game. Insane. Then Badunga with 5.1. Assist-wise, you're going to have to look towards the likeness of DeJuan Harris Jr. with 5.3 and Mayo with 3.2. As I've mentioned, these guys are pretty good. Steals-wise, Harris and Dickinson are going to be your two kind of standouts there. Now, that being said, I watched the highlights of Kansas. First, I watched the highlights of Kansas-Cincinnati. And because it was a low scoring game, it was the closest game, and it was the most recent game. It's like 3 reasons. Like, let's just watch this one. And my first thought was, is this like Lob City? Like, what is going on? This team is like crazy. And so it was pretty low scoring though. I mean, it was like 33-35 in the second half, whatever, in like almost the third quarter. So they pulled away in that game with about 7 minutes to go, and I turned off those highlights and I went to the UCF game. Because 49 points is insane. So I was like, all right, let's see it. That game was insane. I don't care if you're an Iowa State fan. I don't care if you're a fan of the team in Space Jam, not the Earth team. I don't know who that is. Haven't actually seen that movie. But either way, I don't care who you're a fan of. You need to go watch the highlights from the Kansas UCF game. Cinema. Oh my God. It was insane. Truly a masterpiece at work. And that's why I'm a little bit scared, honestly. But I will say this. They were flying through the air like it was the moon. Like, they were just jumping so high. And so I was like, how? I don't know how many dunks they had off the top of my head, but I know they had like 12 blocks. It was insane. Badunga had a block and then chased it, grabbed it, Euro, dunk. So I'm like, okay, these guys are flying. This and obviously Dickinson stands among the rest. I'm like, how tall are these guys? Because there's just no way. They are huge. Well, I was right. Zeke Mayo, as mentioned in the stats kind of portion of this, 6'4". Okay, that's pretty big, I'd say. Then you get to KJ Adams, who I also have mentioned, 6'7". That's pretty big. That is getting up there. Badunga, freshman, dog, 6'9". Now we're getting to like, what? Are you serious? And then you see Dickinson. And I will say, I saw it was Dickinson and Badunga kind of like shoulder to shoulder. I think they were exchanging information on an inbound play. And that's what TJ said as well. I'll get into that in a second. And Dickinson was taller than Badunga. And I'm like, oh my, from the booth, if you can tell he's taller, he's taller. Guess how tall is Hunter Dickinson? 7'2", 265. Wow. And they use it so well. They really do. So all of that being said, the stats, the numbers, the height, the dominance, I'm not scared of Kansas, but I am flat out excited. This will be pure cinema. Now, there are things that the Cyclones are going to have to do well. They're going to have to play one of their best games. Kansas is firing on all cylinders right now, and they have this level of talent and height. It's going to be challenging for Iowa State. I can't lie. We have to rebound well, for one, and we're probably going to have to be knocking down some shots. I mean, we probably are going to have to shoot pretty well because defensively, this team's going to be pretty tough to stop. They move the ball well. They feel the floor. They find the holes, and they're not layups. I mean, he's 7'2", Dickinson. Badunga, 6'9" is what I said? 6'9". They can practically dunk standing up. So they are just, obviously their field goal percentage is pretty high, 79% for Badunga, because it's pretty hard to miss a dunk when you're practically taller than the rim. I just could not believe what I was watching. So, as far as what Iowa State needs to do, need to rebound well, need to try to keep, I guess, the ball out of Kansas's hands, but also to produce our own offense in that kind of flowy state when the I guess like the what they call it, the half court isn't really set yet. We're gonna have to capitalize there because the height that Kansas has and them playing two bigs down low. Jefferson is by far, in my opinion, one of the best players in the nation. Don't get me wrong, but you're gonna have to play a really good game against 7'2", 6'9". So I just seriously can't wait because whatever happens here is going to be amazing. Whether it's situation A, situation B, situation C, however you want to look at it. I mean, we are going to get a just marquee matchup here. I can't wait. And I know that Ames is going to show up. It's going to be so loud. And the players mentioned it, and they know we're going to be there. And I think I'm going to be there too. And I don't know how you can miss a game like this. I just don't know how. This almost feels like once in a lifetime. This Kansas team, so good. Iowa State, so good. 2-8 in our last 10 against Kansas. Not a great record, but this team hasn't played Kansas's team this year yet. So we'll have to see how it goes down. It all happens in Ames at Hilton Coliseum. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be pure cinema. Speaking of in Hilton Coliseum, the women get their third straight win against Texas Tech, and we'll recap that coming up right after this. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in cancel subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, it was a subscription tracker. I went in, found out what I was paying for, didn't know some of it, saved my life. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. The Iowa State men's basketball team will be taking on Kansas. That's all we've talked about so far today. They'll be taking them on tonight. But last night, Iowa State women beat Texas Tech to move to 13-6, 4-2 in the conference, turning things around after a bit of a rough start. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Iowa State wins 71-58, 13-point win for the Clones in a game that could only be described as ugly. Couple things stand out. First one that jumps right off the page, Audie Crooks with 28 points, Addie Brown with 21. She started scoring late too, so pretty good game for her. But then right after that, it becomes 0 for 7 from 3. That's not a great look. I think the last time Iowa State didn't make a 3 was in like 1995. I was -6, so it's a long time. But to be fair, does keeping the streak alive get you wins? Because I think we have 6 losses this year, and the streak was continued through those games. So does the streak give you wins? Clearly not. So what would you rather have, a win or the streak? I'd probably rather have the win. Now, that being said, moving forward, I don't think this is a momentum builder for Iowa State by any means. This was a game that I hated saying it, but I was like, Iowa State should pretty much mop the floor in this one. And they didn't play by any means their best game. I mean, 0 for 7 from 3. 50% from the floor is pretty solid. 25 of 50, but I did pull it up here. Here it is. 50 points in the paint, 50 of 71. So what is that? Over like 70% or 60 something percent of the points came from, in the paint there. And then 20 points came off turnovers. So, that's going to factor a little bit in there too. But this game, it was kind of close early. Texas Tech going up 4 at the end of the first. But then after that, Iowa State wins the second quarter by 7, third quarter by 10. And then from there, tied up fourth quarter, it's going to get you a win if you're Iowa State. I mean, it is what it is. Excuse me one second. So much talking. I mean, this is a tough win. To be completely honest, and for Texas Tech, I would argue even maybe a tougher loss. 1-5 now in the conference. But it's just a win. You have to take the wins where you can get them. And it's something we've talked about this year. Obviously the Iowa State men's win over Texas Tech is one that will probably be looked at a little bit closer. But if you win by 10 or 15 or 5 or 7, or you had 35 turnovers, or you had 16 free throws or 85 free throws, like obviously the outliers are going to be chatted about, because it's like, can you believe they shot 85 free throws in that game? Yeah, they literally scored every single point from the free throw line. That would be talked about. But outside of that, a win's a win. Most of the time we're talking about Kansas. Well, currently Kansas is 12-3, and we take a quick look at the schedule, and it's like, okay, well, they beat North Carolina. They've dominated their last 3 games. Outside of that, we're not diving into a bunch of the stats here. So does Iowa State win 71-58? Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Keeping it moving. This is something that we have to build off of. And I think this is a good sign, obviously, after the Arizona trip, in which we talked about. You get both of those wins after the loss to Utah, and what was a kind of a bit of a skid. That Utah was the end of a 2-4 run, or if you go to just the UConn game, 1-3, win-loss ratio there for the Clones. It felt like a bit of a skid. Did kind of feel like things were getting out of control, especially with the way that the Utah game ended, in my opinion. But they go to Arizona State, they get the win there by 7. They go and then kind of staying in the desert there, play Arizona, and they get that win by 21. Then do they bring it home? Can they keep the momentum rolling? They do. They play Texas Tech, obviously, like we've just been talking about. Not a pretty game, but enough to get the win, to get the job done. That is, and they will have a challenge. They really will. They'll have a couple days off here. Then on the 19th, they'll take on West Virginia in Morgantown, 20th overall. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. And this right here, this game, which we're not previewing today, but this game will be, in my opinion, almost like the indicator of how far off am I in saying that this team is better than their record. Because I've been saying it. I thought they could have definitely beat Utah. They obviously beat Kansas, but in the Oklahoma State game was what it was. And then UConn, it was like, well, they shot 10 of 11 in the first quarter, and South Carolina is what it is. And it was like, I just think that this team is better than their record. And the last 3 games have shown that. I think this team is good. And especially the Arizona trip in there, the way their points were distributed was really promising to me. Didn't quite see that today. Didn't quite see that, to be completely honest. 28 from Crooks, 21 from Brown, 9 from Ariana Jackson, and then only 6 points off the bench, and Emily Ryan was 7. Kelsey Jones didn't have a point as a starter, only played 14 minutes either way. Sydney Harris with 27 minutes didn't get any points either. 0 for 2 for Harris, and Jones didn't even shoot. So not quite that even playing field in this game, but I thought both of the Arizona games, Arizona and Arizona State, I thought they played exceptionally well in the way that they kind of approached the game. And then, it's kind of like what we talked about with the men. Sometimes you just got to win the game. Sometimes it's just about how, what do we have to do? And it's pretty quiet in Hilton, I'm not going to lie. So you could hear the crowd shoot the 3. It's like, let's just win. Let's just win the game. And so, this is just a weird game because it was so slow with the technicals and so many fouls. And how many fouls were there? There were 9 million fouls. 16 fouls on Iowa State and 29 fouls on Tech. That's a lot. That's a lot of fouls. So this game just felt really slow. Booth reviews, stuff like that. Iowa State still finds a way to get it done at home. They'll be going to West Virginia, and then they'll have 2 home games in a row. They'll play those 3 games in about a 6-day span back on that grind, but they'll have a few days off here. So, hey, get that 3rd win under your belt after the Utah loss. You go bang, bang, bang. You get a couple days off. You go face West Virginia. You get a real chance to show kind of what you're capable of, and then you come back home. I think this women's team is in a really, really good spot. I really do. Did they play their best ball against Texas Tech? No. Probably. I'm okay with saying that. No, they didn't. But I think they played some of their best ball against Arizona State and Arizona, and they can use that, build off that. The win from Texas Tech, we shoot into the 19th, riding high. Then we take on West Virginia in what could be a not year-defining game by any means, but I think this is a really good opportunity. I really do. I'm very excited to see what happens in this one. That being said, shout out to you guys for making it to this point in the episode. If you're obviously still listening or watching and aren't subscribed, do that so we can prove it's a Cyclone state, because that's important to me. Look at all the Cyclone memorabilia all around me. Do it for Foam Cy, huh? Until next time, Cyclone fans, be sure to tune into that Kansas game. Kansas, Iowa State men. That's going to be cinema. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.